In today's video, we're going to be looking at some of the weak spots of the rarer vehicles that you can have, and you'll learn from this how to counter them. Starting off with the red M4, you're going to want to aim at this spot here for the tank frontally. This is kind of weakish armor and it should allow you to go through it here. For the M4A4, it's a similar story. You will want to aim at roughly the exact same area. With the ARL-44 though, it is different because you're going to want to aim at the top of the turret with a more high explosive round. You're going to have to want to go around it. This one is difficult to kill, but it can be done. The KV-2, you're going to want to aim right here at the area underneath the gun. It's a really easy spot to get all of the turret crew, as well as this area on the lower frontal plate if you have a higher penetrating gun. For vehicles like the T-34E, you're going to want to aim at the turret ring or the area right below the upper front plate, and that's how you'll easily get a shot through on the front. By the way, both of those work for most T-34s, but it may be more difficult to go through the bottom plate if you don't have a higher penetrating cannon. For the Churchill one, you're going to want to aim at here and here on the front side of the Churchill. You can also aim at the lower frontal plate as well. It's not necessarily recommended, but there are these areas on the turret that you can shoot through as well. Going on to rank 2, if you're going to face the Zerinjie 1, you're going to want to aim at this area on it, on the front. You can also shoot at the rocket launchers on the sides of it, and if it does hit, and there are rockets inside of them, it should cause an ammunition detonation and you will get the kill that way. For the Turan 3, you're going to want to aim at this area on the front. You can also go for this forehead area if you have a more explosive shell, or the cupola. For the KV-1S, you can also aim at the lower frontal plate as well as this area on the front, I believe. Also, if you have a high penetrating gun, I believe you can go through the turret cheeks. For the Su-85A, you can aim at this side and this side of the turret area. For the Brummbär, you can aim at the lower frontal plate as well as the side areas where if it's slightly angled, you can easily go through there. I've also seen some players go through the top leg of the roof to get the kill that way. The Calliope is really easy to kill. You can either shoot at the rack of rockets or the areas where the red M4 and French M4A4 have their weak spot. The T1E1 sides are also very easily penetrated, and that can easily lead to a quick kill in 1 or 2 shots. The M4A5, I believe, has a weak spot here, but if that doesn't work, you can go around the sides to kill it easily that way. Moving on to rank 3, if you have a lower penetrating gun, it may be difficult to deal with the Excelsior. I believe this area right here on the front hull is vulnerable, as well as this bar on the bottom. If this vehicle is angled though, you can go through the sides of the turret, but if the turret is facing towards you, I believe there are certain areas on the turret that has less armor, that it will be green and you will be able to shoot through. At rank 3, the Sherman armor doesn't become so good, but you can still go through the Firefly by using the special areas that we've talked about prior, right here. The KV-1C has weak spots on the lower frontal plate as well as this port right here. I do believe the gun port is also a vulnerability here, though I'm not exactly sure. You can also go through the cupola if you have like an APHE round or a high explosive round. When facing against the Jagdpanzer IV, it's easy to go through the lower frontal plate, but even easier possibly to just take out its tracks and then go around. The T-34-57 has a lower frontal plate vulnerability as well as the turret cheeks, and if you can't easily get through those, you can go through the side to get it. KV-1E has weak spots on the lower frontal plate as well as the sides of the turret, and the little port in the middle of the tank as well. The Su-100Y should have easy weak spots on the lower frontal plate, this upper area of the front, and the area underneath the gun. Moving on to rank 4, the T-34-85 has a vulnerability on the lower frontal plate, as well as some high explosive shots being able to go through the cupola. The ISU has a vulnerable lower frontal plate as well as the sides if it is turned. I believe also you can aim through this area if you have a higher penetrating cannon. The Tiger E, when not angled, you can go through the direct front of the plate here, here, and here. It is recommended to go through the third one as it has ammunition normally right behind it. If it is angled, it can be difficult, but you can go through the turret here. For the VK45.01P, you can go through the front plate, the lower frontal plate, as well as the sides over here. Also, the cupola does stick out quite a bit, so if you have a high explosive round, you can shoot at there. For the Panzer 470A, you can shoot at this bar, which normally takes out the majority of the crew and the lower frontal plate. For the Sherman VC, M36B1, and the M18, you can kind of just shoot center of mass because they don't really have great armor, but you can really shoot anywhere with the R3 and it will kill it. For an IS-1, if it's facing you frontally, you can only go for the lower front plate and it is guaranteed to be a one-shot. If not, you can go for the driver's hatch up here, and the turret cheeks also work if it is looking towards you. For the Su-122P, I'd highly recommend going for the lower frontal plate, but if you don't want to go for that, you can go for the cupola, but it's not guaranteed to kill a lot of the crew, like the lower frontal plate is. For the KV-122, you can shoot here on the turret cheeks as well as the lower frontal plate to take it out quickly. Again, with the Su-122P, lower frontal plate is recommended. For the M4A3 E276W Sherman, it is recommended to go for this part of the gun port, and if you can't exactly aim at that at a long distance, there is a very limited area on the front of the turret where if you shoot there, it will go through and destroy some crew, and you can shoot at the top of it, and if you're using an APHE round, it will explode downwards, killing a lot of crew inside. The M4A276W does not have much armor in comparison, along with the M36 GMC, so you don't have to worry about those. The T-25, if you can't go through its armor normally, it is recommended to go for the weak spot of the lower frontal plate or the area where the machine gun port is. As for the T-26E5, you can also go for the machine gun port here, or there are these little sides on the lower frontal plate that you can go through as well. If it is an M26A1 though, the machine gun port does poke out a little bit more, so it's more easy to kill right about here. And I believe it also does have the vulnerability down here like the M26E5. The Airstats M10 is a little bit difficult to get through, but if you can get through this area on the turret, then you should be fine. Or you can go through the machine gun port right over here. The Tiger 2P has vulnerabilities on the turret right here, as well as the machine gun port, but that's a lot more difficult to get through, so I'd recommend just going for the turret. Moving on to rank sys, I do have to specify that from here on out, I may not have every single vehicle, so if you're looking for specifics on a certain vehicle, I might not have it, and I'm sorry for that. The T-92 you can go through pretty much everywhere because it doesn't have that much armor. For the M46, the machine gun port does poke out a little bit more, so you can aim there to kill it. The T-95 is really difficult to deal with if you don't have a high penetrating round, but you can also use a very high explosive round and shoot at the cupola to kill it. The T-44-100 has vulnerabilities here on the turret, as well as the lower frontal plate being less armored than the rest of the tank. The Su-122-54 is easiest to kill by going through the lower frontal plate if you're facing it frontally, but if it's at a slight angle, you can go through the sides here. The Hori production vehicle is a lot difficult to kill though. I'd recommend attempting to go through here and here because I believe those are more vulnerable spots. You can also disable its transmission by going through the lower frontal plate here and then going around it to kill it. The rest of the vehicles in this platoon don't really have armor, so you don't have to worry about them. For the ALF 1, you can kind of just shoot it anywhere and it's going to go through and kill it. The Lorraine 40T doesn't really have much armor, so it should be easily dealt with by most tanks. For the T-54E2, I'd recommend going for the cupola with a high explosive shell. Again, for the M60, I'd recommend going for the cupola, and maybe the lower frontal plate if you can do that. The M551 kind of is vulnerable all over because of its little armor. To destroy the Object 120, I would first recommend taking out the gun, then taking out the tracks and going around the side to kill it. If not, to kill it frontally, it would be best to use heat at this area of the turret, as well as this area of the hull to kill the driver. To kill the T-54-1947, I would go for the lower frontal plate or the cupola with a high explosive round. To kill the IS-4M, you should go for the lower frontal plate or the driver's hatch. If neither of those work, there's these areas on the turret that are less armored but still may be difficult to go through. To kill the IS-6, there's this area on the turret, as well as the lower frontal plate that is less armored. For the T-10M, you can go for the lower frontal plate, the driver's hatch area, or the cupola, because those places are less armored. And lastly, the T-55 AMD-1, which is the last vehicle I can show for this video. If you are trying to remove it with anti-tank guided missiles, it's obviously going to be really difficult if it's looking at you. Even so, I don't believe that the missiles take care of the lower part of the hull if you're aiming down there. And if you're using high explosive anti-tank or APFSDS, you can aim at the center of mass to take care of it. All other vehicles, like the Object 685, which are in these special platoons, that I didn't give a like penetration area where you should shoot for, it's because most of them are not armored enough that you can pretty fairly and easily take care of them. Unfortunately, I do not have tanks like the Merkava and Mouse, so I can't show you guys how to get rid of those, but I'm sure you can find other videos on how to do it. I hope this guide has helped, and I'll see you guys again in the next video.